Okay, good evening, welcome to New Horizons. If you do have a mobile phone, if you would like to put it on silent, please, thank you. Right, a huge welcome and thanks to Tony Topping for stepping in at short notice as the arranged speaker couldn't make it. Tony's talk tonight is the paranormal identity. Tony's talks come mostly from an experiential viewpoint, having been what can be described as bullied by unknown persons for his inquiring mind and strange contacts. Tony reveals more of his dealings with corrupt and secret agencies who he believes seek to silence and mind control him and others in similar situations. Please welcome Tony Topping.
Thanks to the organisers, it was a last minute thing, and you're very lucky because my name's Tony Topping. Some of you may know me, some of you may not know me, but this is brand new material that you've not seen before. And the reason for that is actually the organisers behind this event that provoked this, because a few months back, well, I think it was last year, maybe the beginning of last year, 2013, they said, well, Tony, your talk's absolutely brilliant, but, you've got everybody's research in there, but what happened to you? What's happening with you? What's going on with you? And what you'll see is that I've got in the media, I'm in the media quite a lot with all this, and this story is going to be, what I'm going to tell you is what really happened to me and what really goes on. And what we've got is we call this talk the paranormal identity. And the reason behind the reason why I call it the paranormal identity is because it's similar to the character Jason Bourne. Not that I'm like Jason Bourne, I'm nothing like him, but it's similar to the Jason Bourne scenario, where the three trilogies of the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Ultimatum, which has a special resonance in me, because he was part of a project, a classified project called Black Briar. In the third Bourne Ultimatum, and a Guardian journalist discovers Project Blackbriar. And as we will see, I was part of a black operational project, the like of which people would just freak out about. So what I've got to do this evening is deliver it in such a way so that it's very simple, you understand, and so on and so forth. And part of this, and later on I'll pass these round, part of this is to do with my journals, which have been on my, well actually these have been on my shelf. This one has been on my shelf for 8 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what these journals are about. We're going to take you on a journey, and we need to define so that you get a thorough, very modern understanding of what really, really goes on behind the scenes when a member of the public like me is liaising with people who are of an advanced nature. And you've no idea why they're speaking to you. You've no idea why they're coming to you. You could easily go down the route of, well, I am the chosen alien ambassador. But that is not the case. That is not what is happening. And what's happening is I was part of an operation, it appears, and what I've done is I've gone through all my journals, and some of them, it's just absolutely staggering. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you an entry from one of my journals. I'll literally read you an entry from one of them a bit later on, which explains what happened to me. So I think the first things first within terms of UFO research. We have got to understand, before we begin this story, how the government and how indeed aliens perceive each other. Because I'm in the know on this, and I've been for a number of years, there are kind of like, this may sound bizarre, but there are protocols involved in governments speaking to aliens and so on and so forth. Our governments, as I'll tell you later, our governments are aware of what is happening with all this, and what we have to do is define the word foreign. Now, what you've seen there is a gentleman called Colonel Philip Corso, the guy with the glasses on the left. And what's happening there is he was responsible for the integration of back-engineered technology into society that we see today. I was giving a lecture at Chesterfield only a few weeks back, and a gentleman came up to me who was part of a special study group, so he told me. Now, the guys who I've met before who have been involved in these so-called special study groups will always come out with the usual bullshit of, oh, that's classified, I can't tell you that, oh, I can't say. And obviously it's complete crap, and I do, surprisingly, which I'll cover later, I get fantasist emails. I actually get emails from people pretending to be from the government, and they know nothing about what's happening. And I'm not saying that I do, it's just that they know nothing about what really goes on, and I've had to know it because of all my experiences spanning a number of years. So what is foreign? Well, Colonel Philip Corso, part of the Roswell UFO crash, when a UFO landed in Roswell, it crashed, they extracted technology from it, and they developed the transistor, and perhaps all the technology that we see today was reintegrated into American corporations like AT&T, IBM, Bell Howell, a few others, and it was integrated by this guy. It is standard knowledge among people who work in these covert arenas that the transistor was a development of Roswell. And this guy at Chesterfield, who was part of this group, just said, yeah, absolutely, it was part of Roswell. It's standard information. We all knew that. The transistor is a development of Roswell. So what we got to know further is that Philip Corso then indicated, because he was part of the US Army's Foreign Acquisitions Department. When you hear the word foreign acquisitions department, you think foreign as in France, foreign as in Paris. Oh, no, no. The American military perceived aliens as in foreign technology, foreign acquisition, foreign everything about them, foreign government, foreign military, because that, as we will proceed into what's happened to me, that's exactly what they are, foreign. And they have to be perceived as such, because if I didn't perceive them, and if these guys didn't perceive them in that way, you wouldn't survive, and I nearly went insane. I've been to hell and back with it all. So this is my journey, what we're going to go into. I'll start at the very beginning. We're going to cover, of course, my journals, the past, my harassment that happened, mainstream media. I'm going to play you a clip of when I appeared on ITV this morning, and that's going to be the launch point from ITV this morning, what I said to presenter Philip Schofield and Ollie Willoughby, and then we're going to go into the straight beyond that, as to what the public don't see. And this is by popular demand from people who really wanted to know what the hell had gone on with me, and this is it. So, my first psychic incidents happened in Robert Street in Selby, North Yorkshire, near York, and that's the place where it happened, down that street there. I had my first psychic incident at age 2, where I had people walking through a wall, and of course, out come the debunkers with the, oh no, at 2, no, you won't be able to remember. I clearly remember. I have a visual recollection in precise real time of people, places and events, and so I know what happened to me. I was screaming in my cot. My father was trying to put me back in the cot. I was screaming my bloody head off. I had I cut my lip in the process, and I'm trying to plead with my father. I'm pointing at him like this, and I remember my dear father going, what are you on about, Anthony? There's nothing there, and putting me back in the cot. And there was. They'd walked through the ruddy wall. So that was my first at age 2. And little would I know as we go through this presentation where it's leading to, because it's leading to somewhere. That's my father, and that's obviously me, the little Ewok on the right. And, you know, we can clearly see that's my dear mother, bless her. My father was potently psychic, absolutely potently psychic. He was approached, so he told me, by the KGB when he served in the army in Austria. And as we'll see, we'll be looking at Russia a bit later through this lecture, but looking at Russia and the way their military look at UFOs in a radical, unorthodox way. So that's my father, and he was very good at healing hands. He would heal dead cats. He would bring back a lady's neuralgia. A lady came into our house screaming in pain with neuralgia, and he would put her hands on her and heal her. And it was all very strange, because he wouldn't smack me when I was 8. He'd just lay me out sparkle on the bed with a headache. So I'd be sparkle on the bed, I couldn't move with a headache, and a lot of people found this, what I've just said there, they find it kind of like cruel, and it was really. He was a very difficult man to deal with. And so, moving from childhood, I had various incidents. I had to go at magic spells, actually. I started using the occult. I cast a magic spell on this gorgeous redhead girl, and a fat sister wanted a date with me, which wasn't very nice. A big ugly fat sister who's like something just crazy. So, you know, it was unbelievable. It really was. And so my first UFO incident was in 1992. And it happened over my house. I was keen on acting at the time, and what happened is, that's the house there. I do apologise for the state of the hedge and the garden, but that's my house there. And coming over the top of that area there, that roof area, was like something out of Close Encounters. It was rotating. It was like something out of Close Encounters. It was there for about 5 seconds. It switched off. It switched on. It went. I wandered around in a daze for a couple of days, wondering what the hell that was all about. So you see, as we lead through this presentation, you will understand that I was being tracked from about 1970 by them. I say them, we will go into who they really are, and it will astound you. So, That's my stage school. I went to the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts. Nothing really much happened between 92 and me going to stage school. Nothing really much happened. That's the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts, and I went to stage school. I studied there, and I began when I left stage school in about 93. I stayed in London. I started having some very strange incidents when I lived in London with UFOs of all things. Including one at St Mary Cray when I was nearly homeless and sleeping on a friend's floor. And I'm sure it happens to us all, but we had this thing, St Mary Cray, where the UFO would come in, a dot of light, it would come in at speed and stop and fly off again. It was very bizarre, and I couldn't help but notice this, that I was being followed by these little dots of light. I learned only recently, I saw one of these dots of light last month as to what they truly are, these little dots of light. It's quite astounding to see them in broad daylight, what they really are. But yeah, so St Mary Cray Kent, coming over the roofs at speed, tremendous speed, and Parade Street, Paddington as well. And Parade Street, Paddington is very interesting because I don't know whether you can see there, but right at the end, on the left, is a big tall building. And what happened just in the middle, what the hell's that in the middle? I haven't noticed that before. Gracious me. That's blown up, is that? Gosh, anyway, it might be a jet, but I wonder what that is. Just in the middle, it's kind of like actually where the original UFO was. It was a winter's night. I'm walking back from Ladbroke Grove in about 94, 95, and all of a sudden this bright white light appears from nowhere and goes across, like where that dot is in the middle, goes across there, and it looks as if it's going to crash into a block of flats. And I remember I'm just about to run to a fire engine and go, look guys, it's going into, and it had gone, it had completely disappeared. And it left me, it was just baffling, just a baffling incident, one of many. Now, little was I to know that I'm hurtling into a situation that I am not aware of, that's coming up in the years ahead, but I'm not aware of any of this, and my naivety would have consequences as well, as it always seems to do with all this, as a naivety. And I was returning in 1996 to Chaos. I returned back to Selby, North Yorkshire in 96, and it began really with this very bizarre two balls of light flying across the backyard, an orange flash that woke up my mother, and then they just disappeared. And I was very shaken up by that, because what happened next was a very strange shape went across the garden and said hello. And you can see, I'm sure you can share with me, even my puzzlement as I stand here speaking as to what's going on, because you have to have an open, cynical mind. You won't survive, you won't mentally get through the ordeal that's going to come up through this presentation of what I lived through and what I am living through. You won't get through it unless you take things, unless you have a cynical mind and look at it objectively. So what happened then was in about 1999, all kinds of strange things happened, and it was a bit of a return to chaos for me, because that is the UFO that started it all. That's the UFO that came in over my house in 1999, and it caused absolute mayhem. It would appear that I was being monitored, and it would appear that they actually knew that I was being watched by these objects. We'll go into who they are. And an interesting pattern emerges. When I reviewed my journals after a number of years, an interesting pattern emerges of what they were doing and what the UFOs were doing, which are two entirely different things altogether. And it's all in the journals here. And so this UFO comes in, and it illuminates a TV antenna. As it spins round, you can see that it's just going to go behind a tree. She knows I cannot see. It's a female pilot. Bizarre as that may seem, it's a female pilot. Actually, that's very important. The female's role in all this seems to be a constant theme in all interactions, including interactions with the Russian military. Very interesting. Anyway, so she's just going behind there, and she knows in a minute that I won't be able to see her on camera. And so she'll back out again. Now, this went for image analysis with a special effects director who worked on Jurassic Park. And he indicated that the thing was not giving off any original civil aviation traffic air sequence strobing lights as they normally do. It's off its approach corridor, and Chris French on this morning said, oh, it's a plane. It's not a plane, it's got reverse gears. The thing goes 360 degrees on its original turn. It will go backwards, sideways, it's hovering capability, it's noiseless, and she's just going to go behind the tree. She realises her error and comes straight back out again. And this is what I call my primary UFO incident, because that's what triggered what could only be described as harassment without oversight by some very unaccountable individuals. I do believe that it is actually a triangle craft that we're looking at there, that's actually strobing its domes and hovering and reversing and so on and so forth. And it's very interesting, the people behind it, because the people behind it are people, but they're not like us, and they're from somewhere else. And of course, we're going to get the usual ridicule about that, but I'm not bothered, because I've lived through this. I've had nearly a lifetime of it, and that's going to be part of the new material of the presentation as to who they are and what they are, which is all very interesting. So you see, she knows she's made a mistake. She comes out sideways now. That's an aircraft. If that's an aircraft, it's moving sideways. It's going like this, and it's rotating 360, and it'll fly back off in the original direction it came, as if it's flying backwards. And that triggered another series of bizarre events, because I was walking back from a friend's house, and in Channel 4, I think it'll be in August or July time, we're going to show in its eternity what happened to me at the various incident locations. Now, what happened is, you'll see that building there. I'll paint the picture for you. You're walking home, all of a sudden an unmarked green helicopter hovers at the height of that roof, appears from bloody nowhere. In fact, my recollection of it is that it actually just rose up like that. It probably didn't, but it's as if it did. And it was close on at me, really close on at me. I'm getting emotional because I'm recalling events. Yeah, it was close on at me. I'm just going to play you a clip of it in action, and I'll explain a bit more about what it was doing. Here it comes now. Does any member of the audience, if we were to think out of the box, it's a military helicopter, based on what I've told you so far, would anybody have any ideas what he's doing? Notice it's got domes on it, and I'll explain all that in a minute. Any ideas at all what he might be doing with somebody like me, other than the fact... Sorry? Yeah, yes, that. Something else as well. He is intimidating, yeah, that's all part of it. But as you can see, he's doing a nice... Note the domes and all the stuff under it. The fact it's got a winch on the side of it, it's a very special helicopter. And that was as a result of the UFOs that were coming in over my house. These are my harassers. These are the people who act without oversight, without any form of oversight within our society, and have their own little secrecy empire. But you have to respect fire. No, quite the opposite actually. He's actually calibrating and taking measurements of me. That's precisely what he's doing. He's actually calibrating. Sorry. Yeah, he's actually calibrating. He's taking measurements. So I found that very interesting, because what he's actually done, as he comes away, this is the sequence that I didn't get on film, but you will see that there's a road junction there. And what he does is he hovers above that lamppost, which you can just see on the left there, and he's hovering. And he's hovering at the height of that lamppost. Meanwhile, the cars are going underneath, parping the horns, thinking, and wondering what the hell's going on. And the fishermen on the canal bank to the right have got their hands on the hitch, wondering why that helicopter is hovering above that lamppost. Now, that helicopter went for analysis at Jane's Defence Weekly. Jane's Defence Weekly took a look at that helicopter and said it is an AS-550. It's possibly an AS-555 unmarked green military helicopter, which is what it was. But a Lynx helicopter pilot said he'd never seen anything like it because it had a sliding door and a winch on the side of it. So it's a very clever helicopter on issue. According to Jane's Defence Weekly, they are not on issue to the RAF. And that would make sense in the context of what I'm talking about because it's possibly American and covertly American as well. So these are all possibilities. What we're doing is we're going through a journey where I'm trying to piece together what's going on. And this is one of the conclusions that I've reached, that helicopter was monitoring me. It was monitoring me because I'd been subjected to the UFOs coming in and they were trying to calibrate and measure. That's exactly what I think they were doing. So it's just part of the interesting thing, and it continued as well, because what happened was that same object, I do believe, later on in November, turned up over my premises again. Now that's a picture of a UFO. The one on the right is taken over Pakistan. The one on the left is myself and the UFO that's coming over. And that happened on the 17th of the 5th, I think, again, or round about that time. No, November 1999 that happened. And that went for analysis again with a guy who was an optical analyst. I wanted to know some questions about what I was seeing. I'm going to play you a clip of what is going on. You will note that there is actually, on the right there, just hang on, where are we? On the right there, you will actually note that there is actually on the right the arrival of something, which is kind of like an odd item, and then even odder is the dot in the background, which we enlarged, and the discovery of that, we suspect what that is most startling as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you the clip of this UFO that hovers over me. Note all the activity that's going on around me. So you can see we're zooming on there, we're getting, that's air traffic. That's something else, but that thing is now moving and is coming round. And then we see the pinprick flash of light. You'll note now that suddenly something comes in as if it's an aircraft. The debate, and even I'm open, the debate about whether it's an aircraft or not is still ongoing. I'm open. I think it isn't. I think it's what we filmed. Note that dot there, flying off to the right, to the left, lower left. And you'll note when it comes into view as well, it will actually take shape as an actual triangle shape with a free strobe dome system on it, which is what I believe was hovering over. There it is now, taking form. Can you see how that is big, domed, and it comes straight over the top of me? There, takes shape now, three distinct gravity-generating domes of some description. Is it a classified craft? It might be. It's certainly not a conventional aircraft as we would know. And it's coming over the top of me. Now, it does an unusual banking turn, and it's straight over the top of me now. There's other UFO activity in the area with it, and we had it enlarged, and that's Stefan's enlargement of what it is. So you can see there, ladies and gentlemen, that on the right is the normal image. That on the left is Stefan's enlargement under optical analysis. That is something very mysterious. Even he says he's not sure what it is. But we reached a startling conclusion that we think that is then enlarged, and that is actually what's termed an ancient dropper stone UFO. So what you're seeing on the right is an actual ancient UFO craft. What you're seeing on the left is an enlargement of it. We suspect that could be what it is. So we actually analyse this. I'm quite happy to know now that the interactions I'm having are with people that are not of this world, and I'm quite comfortable with that. Don't have a problem with that. I have other concerns about it, but I don't have a problem with understanding that that's what it is I'm dealing with. But the question is why? And this is interesting because I had a staggering level of naivety going about my business with all this, and I became very obsessed indeed with filming them, out there filming them. Really, they were all dots of light, if I was to be my own critique. They were all little dots of light that I was filming, and I was trying to get the killer UFO shot. But this is an example of a slow-moving UFO that came in over my house. There's some observations that I'd like to make. What happens is that the UFO, I'll move to the next slide. What happens is that the UFO, that's actually an aircraft, but it is a fine example of the size and scope of the UFO that confronted me at the first scene of my UFO attack in about 2005, I think it was. What happens is that the field to my left is an open field, And what happens is that a UFO of that nature, about 1,000 feet, 1,000 yards out in the field, stood glaring at me. It was like something out of the gunfight at the OK Corral. And what I'm doing is I'm blundering around naively filming them. I'm being monitored, I'm being watched, the phone's been going, I'm being followed, which we'll come to later. And one of those literally attacks me, and what it did is it's probably, I think, a good distance is that back door there. I think it's probably a good gauge of distance. And whatever it did, it made heat in this area here. Heated up this area, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've gone too far now, I'm going to cop it. This is the end. And it flew off. And that was just, it was really bizarre, really bizarre as to why it was acting hostile. And then the second scene of an attack was this street here, which is known as Petery Avenue in my hometown of Selby. And as you can see, what you've got there is you've got one of these UFOs coming again, and it comes in from the right to the left, over the top of the rooftops, and nearly just vibrates my skull. And that was most bizarre as well, because it was using some sort of voice-to-skull technology, which I thought was just also very bizarre indeed, how it would do that. Voice-to-skull technology, which is known as voice delivery to the skull via high-tech means. And I felt as if I was going to fall over, such was its energy. But it came in, it definitely did. That was on New Year's Day, I think, in 2001 when that happened to me. And so what we're getting is this picture of me being followed and UFOs coming in and being attacked by them, and it's all a bit of a mystery, and I can't quite work out why. And it really, I had an incident as well, just to top all this, which I logged down in my journals, which is all here, it's all here. I appear to be having interaction with people that are not of this world, and I appear to be followed, and I appear to be monitored, and I'm going through the various UFO incidents that happened to me, the major ones, and this was an incident with the RAF that occurred with me. I'm blundering along like the guy in the plank, like Eric Sykes with his plank, where I'm turning corners, knocking people over. I've no idea what I'm doing. I ain't got a clue what's going on. It would be wrong of me to say that I did have a clue what's going on. But I do know that I've had extreme paranormal experiences since childhood. I do know that I've been tracked since 1970. And I do know that some covert interest is watching me carefully. And so the incident with the RAF begins, where we have a situation occur with 2 tornado jets over a place called the River Ouse at Selby. And what happened is that these tornado jets, they have low speed manoeuvrability. They can handle like a civilian aircraft at low speeds. And this guy came over the top of me because I was stood near the river. I was feeling very depressed. According to my journals, I was just ready to do myself in over it all, frankly, because it's enough for anyone to take. I've no idea what's going on, and I'm looking at the river flowing past. This guy flies over, and he literally circles me, and he does his warning lights, he does his landing lights on, off, as if to say, are you all right? And I just waved at him. I'll never forget it. I just waved at him, and he flew off. He literally flew off into the sunset, and I thought, oh, well, he's with another aircraft further up ahead. And so I wandered, and I don't know why to this day, but I wandered down the field, to be hit by this. And what happened was that all of a sudden, within the middle of this farmer's field, near the river, was this ginormous flash. And I mean flash. And that's a simulation photograph of it where we've knocked together, because that's what it was like. Now, the pilot saw it. I certainly saw it. I've been trying to trace the pilots ever since. But what happened next was quite interesting, because that's the location of the field on the left where the flash happened. Just beyond the trees, there's a gap. Can you see the gap there between the 2 trees on the left? Don't know whether you could see that. Just before the trees, that ginormous flash. Next minute I know, the jet that's at the far end of that field, and it's probably a good 5 miles out, suddenly hits his afterburners full on and goes screaming after this dot of light UFO that's now flying over that building there, as you can see. And what is even more incredible, which I'll never forget, is that the UFO and the tornado are actually level with each other, flying like this. So they're actually level. They're flying alongside each other, which was just out of this world. So it really was shocking, the events. And of course, it's far more deeper than that. I'm trying to keep it at a level that you understand that I'm being hit, I'm being targeted. And these are the incidents that I've really never discussed in public before in such detail. But you get the image of an RAF tornado and a UFO flying side by side. That's very revealing, because in the journals, why would people from another world be interested in the United Kingdom and its military? Why? Why would it be interested in this country? That was the question that came up to me recently. And that gave me a very interesting answer. So my experiences over the years have evolved, and this is more recent. This is actually started in May 2014. I returned back to my journals in May 2014, and that's a staggering story in itself, after a break of about 7 years. And of course, during that time when I was being monitored and watched, there's a reference in my journals to logging down what time I was on a cycle track and all this kind of thing. Because I was told to, it was very bizarre. And the reason why I was told to was because they had AWACS activity increase in the area, and that was reported in a paper called the Evening Press. That's what you're seeing there is over a UFO zone where I've been filming. That's actually a US Navy craft. That's got US Navy on the back of it, and it's flying straight over the Brayton Bath. It's an electronic warfare craft, and it's just come straight over. Because the US military and indeed the US Navy are deeply involved in UFOs. In fact, on my website, the US Navy is one of my key visitors to my website. The Navy visits a lot because they're deeply involved in the UFO subjects. They really are. And that's kind of like, as I say, like Bourne, I seek my identity. It's like the Project Blackbriar in the Ultimatum film where the secret agents are after him. Their mindset of these people is absolutely unbelievable when they target you. You can't cope with it, you can't handle it. It's absolutely staggering, really. And they're a special group of individuals. I would call them a special study group, actually, who study UFOs. They stalk me, and they still are. I was one party of many, because what happens is in these journals is it would appear that the people off-world are speaking to somebody via me. So when you look at these journals, this is the earliest journal, there's me ranting on about what's happening and I can't understand what's going on. Well, no, you won't be able to understand what's going on because they're speaking to somebody else via me. When you take yourself out of the equation, the whole dynamics change. So I was part of some kind of bizarre repeater network, of a very high-tech one as well, where somebody somewhere is speaking to a party of people who are not of this world. And that's a lot to handle. But these are the conclusions that I reached from reviewing my journals. So I was part of a black operation, and my journals reveal a pattern. There's a set pattern to the behaviour of the people who harassed me. That's a photo of the man, one of them, who actually harassed me. He's still at large at the moment. And that's a story in itself, because what happened there, as you can see, that's the helicopter. He was a mysterious covert agency that he belonged to, and they were seeking a child from me, and that is the constant theme of them, and I won't go into any further details there. But they seem to be, these lunatics who were stalking me, without oversight, on your money, appeared to be in a form of what we could call Black Ops, Blackbriar, Bourne Identity type operation. They were trying to get a child out of me. I'm trying to work for a living. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer with all this, but I know I'm being followed. I know I'm being followed and I know I'm being watched. But what would happen is they cannot predict when the UFO would turn up, according to these journals. They would only harass after the UFO interaction. So they would only hit me with mind control with their delivery systems when the UFO interaction, or after the UFO interactions happen. They could never do it before, and they could never do it during, which means their technology cannot predict. It's not in sync with them. And that is a constant theme within these journals, that these people who were in the UFOs were weaving a pattern of information throughout these journals for me to look at in later years. I didn't know that. I'm going berserk in these journals, wondering what the bloody hell's going on with me, you see. So we do believe, or rather I believe, or I was taught, I was shown, I got to know, and I believe, and it might not be facts, but I do believe, and that opinion could change, that these people have links to NATO and the National Security Agency. NATO is involved quite deeply with the UFO situation. I recommend Richard P. Hall's work on NATO and cattle mutilations. But you would be surprised that that lovely little organisation is involved. And the link to that is tenuous, but it's there. But it did start with me in about 1997, I think, something like that, when I decided to ring NATO HQ in Brussels. And I called them and I asked them about a document called the assessment. And this woman with a French accent picked up the phone. I said, "Do you speak English?" "I certainly do, sir." She spoke English to me. I said, "Do you have a document there called the assessment?" which was NATO's assessment of the UFO situation. She said no, I put the phone down. A few weeks later, we had men up telegraph poles and vans turn up, which I didn't think anything about. But there is a link because the harassment then started. So you do have what would be known as special study groups within certain organisations within the UK and within NATO and within the NSA that study this subject of UFOs very closely indeed, as we will discover. And what I'm going to do is just play you a clip of me doing a piece for the actor Idris Elba. Does anybody know Idris Elba at all? The actor? Yeah, okay. We did this piece for him. It never got to fruition. It was for a competition, a creative competition. But it sums up. This is a clip of me, and it sums up in words of the hell that I've lived through with all this. It just sums it up brilliantly. Now, at first glance, you're going to think I'm going absolutely nuts, which underneath I'm pedalling like hell. I'm like a beautiful swan, and underneath the water I'm pedalling like hell. This is a fine example of it. And of course, I'm trained in acting, so what you're going to see is an improvised piece of me cracking up to camera, but it's good. It's totally, it is as if I'm cracking up.
Targeting UK citizens since 1950, aimed at powerful individuals under special access programs above the law.
Yes, so what I did is I gave them this name, the people who were harassing me and targeting me and making my life a living hell, and you know who you are, even if you sat here tonight, you know who you are, I know who you are. And what was going on, I don't think you are sat in the audience, but you know what I'm saying. They sometimes do come and sit in audiences, or they'll make odd remarks, and that's their thing. It just can't be explained in words, because what you saw there was not funny, even though it was. It wasn't funny at all. That's kind of like the hell that I went through. I'm going to explain what that hell was all about, but I think my actions there to camera just sum up the hell, the mental hell that you go through without words, but with visual. And what we had was that I called them I had a radio show called the Tony Topping Show, and I called them Global Manchurian PLC, or UK PLC, my people who harass me, because they act beyond the law, they are beyond any form of oversight. And of course, the plausible deniability is interesting, because I could probably be counted off to the funny farm because of all this. It works very well for them. The mental health system, as we'll see, works very well for these people to cover their tracks. I was visited by this man. There are covert harassment locations. This one's in the public domain. The second one I'm going to discuss with you, because I haven't discussed that with anyone yet. But I was visited by a pub in my local town of Selby. And these people were aware of my experiences with UFOs since about 1999. What is interesting is that the guy with the moustache will be fully aware of what's going on with me, and what is aggravating is perhaps he knows more than I do about my own experiences, because you're holding a deck of cards and you have no idea the deck of cards you're holding in a very big black game. You've no idea what cards you're holding, but you're holding cards. You're the card player. They can see your hand, you can. And so what happened is, he was aware of my experiences. He is part of a UFO secret police. There is a secret police that enforces silence and gives people hassle. If an ordinary member of the public, breaches the paradigm and interacts with something not of this world, you're going to get heat. You are going to get heat. That's a dead cert. But he had car keys, he had money, and he wandered into the place. Now what they were doing was they were doing all kinds of disgusting things to me with, we'll just say in simple terms, mind control technology, which is deliverable via various systems from satellites, etc., etc. They were waking me up at all times of the day. He gave reference to the fact that that's what he was doing when I walked past him to go to the toilet. He mentioned something that they had been doing with these delivery systems to me, which was waking me up to the toilet every hour on the hour with this electronic delivery system. And he said, I see he's off to the toilet again, with his colleague. Now, can you imagine, audience, being in a pub and you've had a confidential discussion with maybe your husband or your wife, and a guy you don't even know mentions a few details about it as you walk past him? Do you get the picture now, the sinister kind of connotations of what they're doing? Because sinister is what they're all about. I am pleased to say, however, that was in 2000. I'm pleased to say it's now 2014 and that they are completely out of my depth with me, and my experiences have evolved. They have absolutely evolved beyond them. I never thought I'd say that in public, but they have, because they caused me a lot of distress. And well done me, I think, on that one. So, what happened was there was a second harassment location. It was very bizarre, just going back to that one actually. It was very bizarre because what he did is the lady that was with him said, "Why isn't Tony speaking to us?" And he said, "I don't know, come on, let's go." But he had the car keys in his hand, he had money, so he's got a bank account, he's got a vehicle, he's active, he's not from the planet Zog, he's certainly not a time traveller, he knew how to order a can of Coke or whatever he was ordering, so he's involved with one of these covert interest groups that study UFOs. The second harassment location was here, and this was also very bizarre because a male and female visited this location, and they had a very distinct look about them. And you have to respect fire because this man in particular is involved deeply with all this. And he came in and he looked like the singer Rod Stewart. In fact, it was just hilarious. He looked so much like Rod Stewart, it was unbelievable. And these people are meant to be covert ops, deep black, etc., etc. But it's like something out of Monty Bloody Python with them, how not to be seen. They're just blatantly obvious because when you're as arrogant as they are and as unaccountable as they are, you can do what you want. And this was bizarre. The woman with him was like somebody with nervous energy, as if she just walked out of a Tiberday advert. She had this distinctive perm and they didn't fit in. Even the pub noticed that he looked like Rod Bloody Stewart. And a lot of jokes were passed on that one. And he sat back with his drink. And something in my head said, "They're watching you." That's what happened. And I didn't think anything of that, but I thought, they're watching you. They're just watching you, I just know. So what happened next is that I stood outside that door, as you can see in the middle, the entrance to that pub, and I was waiting for my mate to come out with me, and all of a sudden them two joined me outside the door, and the lady in question just turned round, I don't know her from Adam, and just went, "See you later, Anthony," in a foreign accent. And it was, yeah, it is, laugh with me, because it's insane. It's absolutely insane, but they're watching, they're observing, they know that I'm having interaction with something that is not of this world, and that's why they're monitoring. And there's another reason why they were monitoring as well, but the reason why at the time was not clear. So that man and woman was there, and there's reference to her in the journals from these UFOs, because it would appear that throughout this, the UFOs are just doing nothing. They're just absolutely doing nothing and letting all this crazy shit happen to me. And I can't understand why, and that's apparent in my journals. But the man shown earlier was responsible, the man with the moustache, was responsible for a major invasive mind incident of me in 2001. It's kind of like, and I think that kind of like thing I did to camera just sums up, you get the picture of, it just sums up what they're doing to you. They're sending you insane, they're trying to send you balmy. There's an important reason why they're doing it as well, a very important reason why they're doing it. And I'm awoken at 0400 by a simulation. We'll just say it's a simulation that isn't real, it's lucid dreaming, but it isn't. It's an artificial simulation that they're running. They're testing, they're calibrating. And this simulation was part of what is sinister about it is that you're relaxed while attacked. So while they're hammering away at you, it's like somebody beating you across the head with an hammer while your body feels relaxed and you're smiling at them, because they've got total neural control. They're neurally monitoring you as they're doing all this. And it was like a Hitchcock-style stabbing to the head. And what this man was doing, and don't ask me how I know it was him, but it was him, who was getting this Hitchcock-style stabbing to the head. And I woke up and I thought that I was going to die. I literally thought that I was going to die from their activities. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. But of course, plausible deniability clicks in. But Britain is more switched on than we would think to this. And people are more switched on than the always the insane routine. Because I'm sure you will agree, audience, that there's something going on here. Whether or not, there's something going on. Definitely something going on here. So I was awoken night and day. I was being tracked by these special study group people. I was working a 72-hour week, nights and days, and I was awoken to go to the toilet on a regular basis. There was gunfire, screams, phone calls, overt and covert observation going on with the ultimate goal to obtain a child. These crazies seem to be obsessed with getting a child from me. I'm a bachelor. I've lived a lot of years. I live a life of enforced celibacy, which is bizarre. But this is what I haven't dated for a while because of this background. It's shocking, I know, but that's what they wanted. They wanted to obtain a child from me. And they would not go to any lengths to do so, but it would appear that there was other people watching from the skies above who had their own unique observational take on all this, which little was I to know. So, can you imagine working a 72-hour week, nights and days, with a responsible job and having to cope with all this? Can anybody imagine? Probably beyond a lot of people's comprehension, but that's what happened. And the gunfire and the screams, I was awoken from them night and day. It was horrendous. But it was always after, according to these journals reviewing them, always after interaction with a UFO they would hit. Always. The set pattern seems to be that way. So it was pretty nasty, and we had the phone calls and the overt and covert observation. And the UFOs continued to just silently watch. They were coming in over our house and saying nothing and silently watching because this presentation is gearing up to something. And what was happening is it's a tragedy really, because we see the length that they went to give my life a living hell, and the UFOs then appear to just step back and constantly do nothing, but in fact they are observing them. In fact they're observing everything that they're doing. And I feel I can assess from what's happened to me that isn't in the public domain until now, is that I was a go-between acting as a repeater. The UFO interactions have been attempted, the interactions with UFOs have been attempted, but this technology has attempted to disrupt it. They are speaking, these UFOs, the people behind them, to a third party on Earth, possibly similar to the movies you might see of Contact, where John Hurt plays the industrialist, something like that. It's a good guess that that's possibly what's happening, but it somehow involves me and a liaison with them. But they are speaking definitely to a third party, and communications have been disrupted by another party. So you've got a great big game going on that the public don't know about, involving the UFO situation and myself and interaction. I think that the goals were to test mind control on me. I'm going to keep it simple, but I think that's what they were doing. To intercept and gather intelligence about UFOs across the dreamscape and to obtain a child from me for ulterior motives, which was a constant theme. When I say across the dreamscape, has anybody seen the film Inception? Nobody's seen yeah, you've seen Inception? It is similar, it's a similar scenario to, I call it a dreamscape, they call it a space-time continuum, where interactions are happening at a level, kind of like, we have the world of spirit, and we have the world of time and space and dimensions. Somewhere in between all that, these interactions are occurring across the dreamscape. And because the dreamscape is not bound by time as we would know it, the entries in the journals would indicate that they may be speaking to a third party that is not in our time frame. And that is staggering. That is absolutely staggering, but such is their technology that it is a distinct possibility and assessment that that was what was going on. This I have never discussed in public before, so you're getting it first here at St. Anne's. So, I think some further points on high-tech harassment, and we'll lead into what's going on with GCHQ as well, which is very interesting. But I think the ethical line was lost as the military march with the mind-tech revolution continues. I think the ethical line with me was certainly lost, and my thinking was definitely disrupted. It was organised stalking at the highest level, and it's a form of psychoterrorism. And the group concerned do not like this information in the public domain. They're very, very jumpy about this kind of information getting out in public. But I fight my corner about what happened to me, and I try and stand for and try and fight back due to what had gone on with me, because it's just not very pleasant. There's no answer to the moral question on what happened to me in terms of what they did to me. It's commonly known, what they were doing to me is commonly known as control effects. They're commonly known as control effects personnel. They try and control behaviour. I can guarantee for a fact that my experiences have evolved in such a way with what's going on out there in the skies above that I'm now completely evolved past them, which causes probably, I would think, a lot of freaky disruption among them, which is what you want. In simple terms, very simple terms, microwave beam can be generated to simulate sound effects in your head. And this technology was directed at me to shut me up, to keep me quiet, to disrupt, to cause all kinds of hell to me. Gunfire, screaming, trying to work the hours that I was working. I eventually cracked up and left my job, which is no surprise, isn't it? But this technology was directed at a small minority, and it is now 75%. And what is very seriously worrying is what happens if they think that the fracking people might deserve a bit of this treatment. Where does it go? Where does the oversight go? There isn't any oversight with all this, and that is actually just very worrying indeed. I think we can draw some further conclusions. I'm maybe repeating myself, but the attacks were part of a covert operation that were happening to me. I assessed, based on the view that the guy turning up at the pub with his keys, his money, his car, his vehicle, I assessed that they were possibly from a location. I assessed also that they were running this from a psychotronic station. The psychotronic stations, the Russians know a lot about this. Russian mind researchers know a lot about the term psychotronic station, but you would not hear that in the Western media, the psychotronic station. They are sometimes running, from the research I've done, IBM computers, and they're running uplinks and downlinks to satellite, which they would. It makes sense. It makes sense because I'm targeted by something that's exotic, unusual. They'll want to remotely monitor me. They'll want to see what's going on. That all makes sense with them. But they don't do ethics. They don't do apology. They don't do anything like that. And of course, implants. They will, as we'll see later, definitely an implant going on there with me, and definitely I started getting the fantasist emails and strange emails. That happened recently actually, where I got an issue with a guy who sent an email to me saying the sort of technology they were using and the fact that the UFO that came in over my house was this, and he worked at such a location where that psychotronic station was coming from. Utter bollocks. Didn't know what he was talking about in the slightest. But that's interesting. Very interesting that I get these kind of emails. One day, somebody will be bold enough within their framework to stand up and be counted on the issue of what's been going on. But these techniques, you've probably not heard of these terms before. These techniques are very handy, especially if you're involved in the activist movement or the truth movement, because they use psychotronic influencing as in psychotechnology. They are also secret, open, combined, and they're also opened and combined, which is what happened to me. Opened and combined surveillance is very good, because it leads to the conclusion that you're mad, that I'm mentally ill. It leads to that conclusion. So the mentally ill individual then turns to the law enforcement people, and then they're then sectioned. It works lovely. And it creates an intentional disruptions to the victims, resulting in mental illness. And what is even more sinister is that the DCM, the manual, the mental health manuals, have been rigged by doctors so that the victims of technology will appear to have mental illness should they present these symptoms. They rigged it. And a fine example of that is the pub where he said what he was actually doing to me with waking me up, etc., etc. Happening in Britain, ladies and gentlemen, with unaccountable individuals. It's an absolute disgrace. So, just to recap, psychic experiences since a child. I've had interactions with UFOs. I am targeted by UFO secret police, which is part of a black operation, and the attempts to disrupt the interaction between me and the UFOs have occurred. We will go into this presentation, we'll go fully into the interaction with them from the skies above. It's fascinating. But the UFOs currently at this stage of the game appear to do nothing. What we're seeing there is one of the UFOs that came in illuminating a TV antenna. We tried to simulate that with car headlights, torches, and we couldn't get the same effect. So there you go. Now I hope the organisers don't mind. You've taken in a lot of information in a short space of time. It is coming up to about 5 to 10 to Rob, and it's a bit warm. So I don't know, would you have any objections to having a break off, do you think? Yeah, is that all right? Okay, thank you very much. We've done the recap. We've had the issue of the fact that I've been targeted from childhood. We're gearing up to actual interaction with them, which is something I've never discussed of in public before, and that is due to public demand. Frankly, I'd just sooner sit here and not talk about it, but the people have spoken who I've met, and they've said, we want to know what's gone on, Tony, what's really gone on, so I'm going to show you some glimpses of what's really happened to me, which is spectacular, really. And as a gentleman said earlier, perhaps, and well, it's not a perhaps, it is perhaps an honour to be involved, but I've had a lot happen to me with it all. So, yeah, so I want to cover an organisation in view. We're going to now put the presentation up into high gear and go into the modern kind of era of what this UFO interaction is all about with the people behind them. And I call them people. You will note I don't call them alien, I call them people, because that's what they are. But that brings up some interesting concerns for me, which is perhaps another lecture. But we're going to look at something called Government Communications Headquarters and the UFO connection with them. And the reason for that is because there has recently been Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian, Edward Snowden, the mass surveillance of people. I can say, and will make no apology to say, and I know you as the audience will appreciate this, but the public might not, I can say that I have seen the surveillance state beyond Snowden, the corruption, the high-tech technology that goes beyond your internet access and tapping your emails and tapping your phone. This is about mind tap, it's about getting your head tapped, it's about, as I explained earlier with the cracking up thing on the camera, that's what really, really goes on behind the scenes. And I'm not accusing, by the way, this organisation here of anything at all, of being involved in my targeting. I have no idea. But what I will say is interesting about the Government Communications Headquarters, which has had such a furore, the NSA invested about 150 million into it. You can guarantee that any organisation that's looking at somebody like me will not want this in the public. Well, I am in the public, and that's a good thing. But you will find that I could be heavily debunked and discredited. We'll see the level of heat that we get. It was interesting when I was speaking at Chesterfield, a well-known guy turned up who was a debunker, and I watched him very carefully, even though I was talking. He had absolutely no idea I was observing him. What was interesting about him is he only wrote down the bits that he could debunk quite easily. He didn't write down anything to do with the fact that the helicopter went for analysis with Jane's Defence Weekly, nor the image analysis parts of my presentation. Didn't bother writing that down, because anything at all that gives credibility to my story could change paradigms and change beliefs, and we don't want that. And perhaps, you know, this is probably, are these the gatekeepers, these guys? We're going to have a look. GCHQ is rumoured to have looked at various UFO incidents, including one that happened in the 90s, and sources indicate those within GCHQ are tasked with examining such data, which they will be because they're smart people. They're smart. So they would actually look at this, and they were convinced, so the sources were telling about all this, they were actually convinced that they were dealing with an alien technology which was infinitely advanced, more than the 21st century. I would suggest that the people I've dealt with, which we'll go into, are probably 2 to 3 centuries ahead with their technology, but we'll go into that later. Now, what happened is that the Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian leaked information. Edward Snowden leaked this information, and it was a presentation. And this is interesting for those of you involved in the truth movement, because I think there has to be clear oversight and accountability of all this. And obviously, this leads, what I'm talking about has led to some very sinister goings on, which is very disturbing. And what they came up with is, this was leaked by Glenn Greenwald. Edward Snowden leaked this. It was called the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, or JTRIG. They had a precise slide presentation of how they manipulate beliefs, how they manipulate people for public opinion, and so on and so on. And what there was in that presentation, which Edward Snowden didn't give reference to and neither did Glenn Greenwald, were in fact UFOs. There was actually in the presentation some actual targets. Now, that image there, which is another lecture altogether, is taken from something called the UFO Air War of 1950. It's a typical dimensional UFO craft overflying an F-94 fighter in 1950. That's another story. But the art of deception is a training for a new generation of online covert operations. Remember that Lucky Me here has been the victim of a covert operation. The target is false material injected onto the net to destroy the target. So if I'm coming out with all this, I can gauge the level of heat coming back at me from the internet. I can gauge if I'm on the money, and I think I am on the money with what's happened to me. The Art of Deception has 3 PowerPoint slides that was presented at GCHQ that shows UFO photos dating as far back as 1950. What we can see, and this is interesting because in 1953, the Durant Report recommended debunking for national security reasons within America, and the first of these 3 slides, and that's slide 1 within the presentation called The Art of Deception, was taken from Redbud, Illinois in 1950. What they're doing, what UFO researchers are thinking is that there is a theme of deception within UFOs going on, a theme of cover-up, and there's a major cover-up going on, a major cover-up regarding UFOs, definitely so. It was a national security policy, and still is to this date, that is clearly reflected in the Art of Deception presentation, and I have seen the worst of it, and I really have seen the worst of it. And the image, that's another image that was in the screen presentation called The Art of Deception. That's another image of a screenshot taken by Arturo Robbins Gill in Mexico in 2005, and that's in the GCHQ presentation. The question has arisen among UFO researchers is, what are they doing there's obviously a clear art of deception going on and deceiving the public as to what is going on. That has very serious consequences for us as human beings and the way we as a civilization go down in the future. It most certainly has consequences. So I disagree that there should be a cover-up. This is slide 3, the third image in the presentation that was given to GCHQ, and it was at St Austell in Cornwall. Now, there's no text accompanying that slide, but it appears in a section of that presentation called Strand Free Influence and Information Operations. Strand Free Influence and Information Operations. So if you've got somebody who's out there and they're coming out with all this UFO stuff, the heat will kick in, the lockdown will kick in. The thing is, though, I will just add that from my point of view, which is now professional at all this, I've just put there suggest clearance higher. That means that the slideshow that you saw with J-Trig and GCHQ, the people looking at that, VRK and VK, VRK, VRN, very restricted knowledge. Yeah, VRK, very restricted knowledge classifications and so on. So within the UFO, within the study groups of looking at UFOs that keep quiet and it's all covert, the people probably looking at this presentation may not have the security clearance to know that UFOs even exist. And that's the thing about it, which is interesting. What you have is a compartmentalized secrecy empire built on corruption that Eisenhower warned us about. And I find that all very sinister because we don't know. As I said earlier, 75% are now targeted by mind control. It's a concern if you're stood there at a fracking protest or you stood there somewhere else. Are you going to be now the 80%? It's very worrying. It's very concerning indeed. And so we move forward into the next stage of the presentation, which is the areas that I've never talked about before, that the people like yourselves came up to me and wanted to know about. So I'm going to give you now the clip. I'm going to play the clip of me appearing on ITV this morning and getting Dr. Chris French to open. I opened the trapdoor for him and he walked in. Actually, I think he's a nice guy, but anyway, I opened the trapdoor for him and he more or less said, yeah, I think there is aliens out there. It's quite an incredible little clip, really. Now, this takes us, from this clip, it takes us right into what you're going to see is what I say in the media. And then I'm going to take you into what's going on beyond that clip of this scene that you're going to see. What's really happening behind the scenes, and that's going to probably astound you. Here we go.
Next guest claims to fall into Tony Topping and Hilary Porter had never met until this morning, but they both swear that they have been abducted by aliens.
Also with us is psychologist Professor Chris French, who hopes to explain why he thinks there are other factors here and not direct alien contact. Welcome to all of you. Hilary, can we start off with your story? Because you've had many experiences.
Yes, I have.
The first one was when you were 5 years old. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I went missing before that from my garden. My parents had made sure I couldn't get out in any way whatsoever, but I used to go missing, and my mother used to have to come and find me, and I was only between 2 and 5 years old before that. And she used to find me in another housing estate, which was for the RAF personnel from Farnborough, called Rathborough. And I used to be in a daze and everything, and she just couldn't understand how this happened. And it went on for quite a few times.
You said there was a cinema screen appeared on your
Yes,
wall.
when I was tiny, and they used to, these robed figures used to come into my bedroom, and they used to put a cinema screen like on the wall of my bedroom, and they used to show me, I don't know, strange images, which I was so young, I really couldn't understand.
A lot of these memories you say you don't remember until 1994. What made you remember everything?
I had a crisis abduction at that point, where I came back very badly bruised, and I was feeling extremely ill. And then in the evening, when I tried to go to bed, I started getting flashbacks all the time, flashbacks of things that happened, and it took me down like a kind of timeline right back to my early childhood.
And have they taken you recently?
Yes, I was taken early in January, and I've had the most excruciating bone bruising and things. Yeah. If I'd done it naturally, I'd have been in absolute...
Where did they take you?
Well, aboard their craft.
And what do you remember of that?
I don't have much memory of what they actually do. I have some from other abductions, but not a great deal on this particular case.
And do they take you, I mean, are you asleep and then it happens overnight, or does it happen when you're just walking along the street, suddenly it happens, or when does it happen?
It happens usually at night.
And how do you know you're not dreaming?
Because you come back with scars and scoop marks and things, which is medical they dig some layers of your skin away, and they take and they leave you with bruising and scars. And for women, of course, they can gynecologically mess about with you, and for men, they want men's sperm and things like that. So it's really nasty, you know, and they can come back pretty badly bruised as well.
You'd have thought if they're taking all these people, they'd almost, because they're that intelligent, they'd sort of know what they need to know by now.
Well, they've been taking all these years because what it seems like, through my research and everything, as an alien abduction counsellor for BEAMS, British Earth and Air Mystery Society, is what I'm learning from all these people is that they're making hybrids now, and they've been doing this for decades, but they're having to keep working on them and work until they make...
They're making hybrids of us?
Hybrids, yes.
Wouldn't you thought they'd have gone for sort of Olympic athletes?
Not necessarily.
That's
no.
a good point.
It's certain bloodlines, it's certain genetic things that they seem to want. And if we've got it, then they want it.
Tony, same for you. You say at 2 they came through your wall. I can't remember what was happening at me at 2.
No,
2 years
this
old.
is the strange thing, Philip, because at the age 2 I have a vivid recollection of it, which to me is shocking. It shocks me that I can clearly see what's going on. And what I saw, that they weren't aliens, they were just 2 people walking through a wall at age 2. And a vivid recollection of my father. I'm pointing, I can see myself doing it now, pointing at the wall, I'm crying my eyes out, and my father's trying to lift me in the cot and say, there's nothing wrong. And the experiences continue from there.
But you couldn't have had a dream at that age?
Oh, I was fully awake. I was not asleep when that happened.
Well, as it happened older, when you were older, you say you saw balls of light in the...
Yeah, at age 7, coming over the house, yeah. None of it is related to being asleep. Everything is related to actual physical interaction with objects and seeing them and filming them. And at times it's been absolutely hair-raising.
Well, this has continued to happen at 22, and then 4 years later, the same thing happened again.
Yeah.
You did actually, because the one thing people say is, well, how come none of this ever gets caught on camera?
Yes.
You have caught this on camera.
Yeah, we have caught it on camera. I think Philip raised an important point about athletes. Why haven't they gone for athletes? Because I've done research, and I do know that there are people in the aerospace and defence industries that are having interaction, intelligent interaction with them, but are keeping it out of the public domain.
How do you know that?
I have interest in a NASA scientist at the moment. I know who he is. His experiences, not his alien experiences, but his scientific understanding is in the public domain, but his alien encounters are not in the public domain.
So talk us through what your first piece of footage here. What have you got here?
Right, well, this is the piece of footage that really started some very strange goings-on for me, and this is a UFO that went for image analysis with a special effects director who worked on the movie Jurassic Park. He took it away, we had a look at it. It's not giving any civil aviation strobing sequence. He somehow did a colouring sequence on it to see if it was giving a CAA aircraft strobe sequence, which it isn't. It goes behind the tree because it knows that it can't see me. So it comes back out again, and it seemingly comes back 180 degrees on its original course.
Because
so,
you believe that they're tracking you, don't you?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
What do you think they want from you?
Well, as I said to your researcher, I'll probably go to the grave never knowing, which is the saddest part of it. So the experiences are real, but I'm afraid that I don't know the answer to that.
You don't think, because you say that there are unmarked helicopters that follow you around, a silent police force watching you?
Yes, oh, definitely. I make no apology for a silent police force watching us.
I mean, that just looks like a helicopter to
me. Well,
it
isn't. That went for the analysis with Jane's Defence Weekly. And what we had there was that this is actually an AS-550 helicopter, not unused to British Special Forces. We had a Lynx pilot look at this. It has, it's known as a winch sliding door variant helicopter, which is very, very rare indeed. It is green, it is unmarked, and it appeared when the activity of the UFO that you have just seen started turning up. and it's been very strange because I've been followed.
Why would you be followed by a silent police force?
Well, it's not so much followed. It's what's the word? Harassed is the word.
You're being harassed?
Yeah, absolutely. You do have people. You ask people who have had encounters, for example, people in the aerospace or defence industry who are having these experiences will actually keep quiet about it, but for the simple fact that there is an invisible, unaccountable enforcement of silence upon what is going on.
Chris, you've listened to both of our guests. What do you make of that?
Well, there's a hell of a lot there to comment on. I mean, I don't find the kind of filmed evidence there convincing. I mean, it looked like a helicopter. It looked like an aeroplane in the other clip to me.
But it went
the idea,
Chris, though, didn't it?
I'm sure I could wheel out dozens of experts who would contradict the one unnamed expert that we've just heard reference to.
Also.
Yeah.
The idea that anybody
with you.
could actually accurately remember something that happened at the age of 2, we should treat that with extreme caution.
Why should we?
And I mean, the fact that Tony said that you could actually see it happening there, you know, it's if he could see himself in the scene, then clearly it's a false memory, because that's not the way it works.
No.
Now, all the other kind of experiences that we've had, a lot of them strike me as being very likely to be kind of related to sleep disturbances, and I've looked at Tony's website, and a lot of them clearly are.
No, they're not.
And sleep paralysis is something I've talked about on this programme many times before, but it's a very, very common phenomenon. People wake up, they see things that aren't there, they hear things that aren't there, they have very terrifying experiences.
Isn't it possible we could be being watched and that we could be being taken by some alien race?
It's logically possible, but we have to examine the evidence. Think about the fact that we now have more CCTV cameras in Britain probably than anywhere else in the world. By now, there ought to be more than just bits of film that we're not quite sure.
They always do seem a bit blurry.
Well, you surprise me, Chris, that you're open. It surprises me, because I've always got the impression from other people that you're very close, but you seem open.
No,
you're open to suggestion, which I find quite... I'm taken aback with, because I thought you were staunch. You know, you're open, which is a good thing. But a lot of them are dots of light, which gets very boring.
Bit like that one.
No, not at all. That's gone for image analysis to a top image effects director. I'm very happy with the conclusions reached. Granted, I have a YouTube channel, and that's filled with boring dots of light, and I need... Granted, I need something more solid, where you can say, yes, that is definitely.
I think the world needs something more solid.
I agree with you.
Something more solid, because I think if we were given something that was crystal clear proof, we'd all say, right, OK, fair enough, well, I'm with you on this.
I mean, logically, it's totally possible. I think most scientists, and I include myself in this, would say that we don't know, it's a guesstimate, but yes, I think there's probably life out there. It seems very, very likely. Whether or not it's making contact with us on a regular basis, that is the question, and the evidence there just isn't convincing.
But you see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you would appreciate that, of course, they don't want crystal clear proof. That's the last thing they want, because the sinister silence behind all this, or the oppressive silence behind all this, is quite sinister. The guy I was talking about on there was a NASA scientist, who I won't give his name on camera, but basically he's not a NASA scientist anymore, he's working elsewhere now, but he was working on propulsion calculations for NASA. He was having a hell of a job on trying to calculate a calculation problem, and it is said that he woke up in his bedroom to discover them stood there showing him a star map. A few weeks later, he's going down the road with his girlfriend in Illinois, I think it was, and next minute he notices a UFO landed by the side of him, big one. And he's a very educated man, and his work is in the public domain, and he's very well known, but all that is not in the public domain. And a relative of his, sent me an email telling me who he was, and the voice is unmistakable, it's definitely him, but he had his voice disguised. But anyway, needless to say, the propulsion calculations, he was helped and he resolved the issue. I understand that there's a book out there, what he's done to do with space travel and calculations. Very interesting. But we're exploring my journals with the help of the former KGB, the Russian spies, because they have a fascinating part to play in this, in understanding and the evolution of my interactions, which happened recently in 2014. I'm going to look now, because I've never talked about in the public domain my actual interactions with them. This is due to popular demand, and also due to this venue here that wanted me, the people here at the time, there was about 3 of them, pushing me to say, come on, come out with it. So this is what it's all about. Now, there are 2 groups that I've been speaking to behind these UFOs. We will say that one is a dimensional group across the dreamscape of time and space, where in simple terms, there is like a dream. You dream quite easily, and in simple terms, they walk into that dream space with artificial technology and create what is known as a bridge into their world. Very basic, very simplistic, but that's kind of like the theme of it. But there's a second group, which this presentation is going to focus on, which are the tall blondes. The UFO researchers know them as Nordic, or the Swedish group. They're fascinating. We're going to focus on them. My interactions deal with them quite a bit. And the UK government, so they tell me, so the people in the skies above tell me, and by the way, I have to keep an open mind. Nothing is gospel, nothing is laid in stone, because if you don't, and you start believing, and you start thinking that you're bigger than you are, you will not survive the situation. The UK government have been aware since 1960, so they tell me, that they have been visiting and are not from this galaxy. And not only that, the question constantly through my evolution, which happened recently in January 2014 with all this, is why the UK? Throughout these journals, there is a constant theme from them about the United Kingdom and watching the United Kingdom very closely and where it is in the world and all this kind of thing. It's as if the United Kingdom has been chosen, and there's an important reason for that. Important reason indeed. So what we're going to look at is some terms which I'm returning to this venue to do which was my actual talk, which is about remote viewing, and we're going to cover that. But we need to just look at the Russian system first of all, because in 1940, I've spelt that wrongly, there was an organisation called SMERSH. SMERSH means deaf to spies. SMERSH, even in 1940, the Russian intelligence organisation SMERSH was gathering intelligence on the fact that children and adults were being abducted from villages in World War II. They had a little handbook called the Extraterrestrial Handbook, and SMERSH agents were jotting down what these things look like and all that kind of thing. The ethics of their actions from those people above in the skies disturbs me somewhat, though. You have to have a cynical mind. You have to class it, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, as foreign. I have to do that because I have to have my guard up, but I'm not sure what I'm dealing with, and that's probably only natural. But what happened is that the man behind the Russian organisation, they developed a system called meta-contact. You wouldn't have known of this, but the paranormal warfare systems of the KGB were very advanced. And it was based on brain tuning. And what they did is they did a system where they wanted to make contacts with representatives of other civilizations using something called meta-contact. And the program of communication with extraterrestrial intelligence, as far as they're concerned, has been developed for several years and is still present. They succeeded, and that's the man behind it, Alexei Savin. They succeeded in contacting one of these ET civilizations, and they had 3 military groups working on it. Scientists, the military scientists, and note that, very important, female information channel operators. Because what this man knew was that women were bloody good intuitives, women were bloody good psychics. He had a whole unit of them, and it was that unit that zoned in on them. Now, this is interesting, and this is true in my interactions in the journals here, that 90% of interaction, this was concluded by this man and his team, and it's in Pravda, it's in the Russian media love this guy, they don't ridicule him, he talks very openly about it, no problem. 90% of interaction is with female aliens, yes it is. For somebody like myself who's dealing with all this, 90% of the time it has been with female ET. You're never prepared for what they look like. And no military information was given by ET, only medical information. They have a particular view about us, these people from the stars above, a particular view about how we're doing things and all that kind of thing. They have some interesting terminologies about what we're doing to each other. So my journals, as we can see, cover 2003 until 2009. I've never talked about them before. St. Anne's here is actually the first venue I've talked about it. And they've been left on my shelf until 2014. This one here is probably the evolution of them, because this one here began in May 2014, where I really knew what I was writing about and excluded everything else, based on the techniques of the KGB, which was to separate signal from noise and to have a high quality of data retrieval, a high quality of information enclosed in what you were recording. Any crap was thrown out, any hearsay or suggestion had to be solid. And that's what this one is. Compared to this journal here, which is from 2003 until 2006, which in a lot of cases, at first glance, could be the rant of a lunatic, but it isn't. It's actually a man, myself, trying to get to grips with what's going on with me. But if I take myself out of the equation, they're speaking to a mysterious third party. That's what they're using me as a link. Very interesting. Anyway, so, left on my shelf, and the interactions are astounding. There's one-dimensional group and one intergalactic group. And that's actually the image of an implant that they said I'm implanted with. So I'm implanted, I'm monitored, I've got an implant, and that's what, like a drawing of what they showed me, of what the implant is. It's probably a biological implant, it will be undetectable, I'm probably even monitored now. I don't go in for the fact that I could close my eyes and contact them, I don't do magic tricks like that. This is just real life. This is really, really what happens in the real world with UFOs and aliens. The mainstream public, you see, we're all right with the UFO situation when we're looking at strange lights in the sky, what the general thought of the strange lights in the sky, what Dr. French thinks of it, and what anybody else thinks of it. But as soon as we moved, and this is classed as disclosure, that's classed as disclosure, that's actually a craft that I drew of one of their craft. As soon as we move beyond that, heat starts coming, the lockdown starts coming in, secrecy, covert interests, big corporations, they don't really want people to know, but it's happening. The change and evolution is happening. And so what we've got here is, as I say, anything beyond this area and the heat actually starts. That's an interesting drawing. I don't know whether you could see that, but as you can see, there's an entry in 2003, just at the top there, from this green journal here, where my mind battles the depression and trauma of the psychic freak I have become. You see, I'm part of an operation, I'm part of somebody else's game. And of course, I would think that because I'm actually not quite involved in what's going on, I'm just a link. But you see, my mind's trying to think, and my mind's engaging the cogs thinking I'm involved in some way. You have to step back, and I am involved, but you really need to step back. But they said that no human is to understand this reality. It's the unwritten law. And I have jumped the fence, and I think, from gathering from the public, and even a gentleman that spoke to me tonight, he's certainly jumped the fence as well. It is chaotic, and at times the journals are a tragedy, and they are a tragedy, as we see the lengths those who targeted me went into to making my life a living hell. And you note I call them people, not aliens. You become used to what they look like, and you get acclimatised to what they look like, as if they were stood in the room now. It's remarkable, really. The interactions with me, with them, tell me to log everything down, and also, as I've said earlier, the continual interest in the affairs of the UK by them is puzzling. Anybody guess why they would be interested in this country? Nobody? No? Okay. I seem to step back, not really grasping the full impact of what I'm saying, nor the shocking suffering involved in being hit by an unelected secret police. So what I'm doing is I'm recording interactions with them, but I don't notice, which is fascinating when I look back over these years. In 2003 to 2005, in this journal, I'm recording interactions with them, but I don't even notice because they're absolutely whacking me with mind control and whacking me with all kinds of crazy shit. So that's the idea. Not to notice, that's the idea, but it's in there. The interactions are clearly in there. And I had to step back and obviously review what was going on. And my first encounter was in 1997. It happened in Woodville, but what happened is that is a real, that's a human lady, but it's a very dead ringer for the first alien encounter that I had. I nearly died of bloody fright. Anybody who says that you won't be scared of them, well, fair enough, but I just wondered what the hell had hit me. And what happened was, my old house is Robert Street in Selby, and what they did is that lady who looks like an alien, we'll call her an alien, we don't know who she is, we'll call her a female alien. She had her back to me. If you can imagine, guys, that long hair being tied back like this, and I'm thinking, who the hell's that? She's in my old house in Robert Street, but I've moved across town 2 miles away, and I've been in that house a number of years, but she seems to be in my mother's bedroom, stood up at her dressing table in my old house in Robert Street, tying her hair back. Who's that? When she turns round, she goes, how do I look? Now, you may think, what's going on? Is he? No. What's happening is there's simulations running. The technology is very clever, it's very advanced, it incepts into the consciousness of the mind, and the brain can see clearly interaction. Why have long-range radio communication with them when you can communicate at the speed of thought with them? That's the thing, the technology is very clever. The eyes of her were more slanted, like this though, and she glowed radiant health. I mean, absolute radiant health. The skin was glowing, very healthy looking lady, and very attractive as well, it has to be said. And the journals show that the mind control torture appears out of sync with the UFO interactions which they do. and there are two ET groups, one dimensional and the other is Nordic blonde, and they told me that they were from the Andromeda galaxy. You will hear on the internet a lot of people saying, I've had interaction with aliens, they're from this galaxy, that galaxy, but the Nordics, never have I seen on the internet anyone say that the Nordic blonde type aliens that look like Scandinavians are from the Andromeda galaxy, but that's what they told me. That is not necessarily gospel. I have to keep an open mind. But one thing is for sure, I think if it was a scientific journey with them, I wouldn't understand that, but I think what they're telling me is it's a spiritual journey, a spiritual one for me. And we can certainly see it appears our interactions have an influence on these star visitors, including references to nuclear weapons, which are referred to them during the course of my experiences, and the complexity, the scientific complexity and the quantum interactions to generate interaction with them is staggering and probably a lecture in itself. But included references, the term are the natives throwing rocks at each other was a term they use. In terms of nuclear weapons, they would say, the natives going to start throwing rocks at each other. That's how they view nuclear technology in our countries, as natives throwing rocks at each other. And you're talking of a civilization 3 centuries ahead in technology, smart people, they're smart, they're smart individuals. And I'm part of an operation which means that these journals, which is the first time I've spoken about them in public, they appear on time, but not necessarily my time. This is a key to understanding them and their journals, because there's a possibility that they are communicating perhaps in a future time frame. The staggering thing about these journals is this, is that they're not communicating possibly with a party in the 21st century, but with a party in another century further down the human timeline. And that's highly possible in the realm of the subconscious and in the realm of quantum physics and in the realm of thought. Time is not linear. That's a distinct possibility that I glean from that. And I could be wrong, but I hazard a guess that that's why it was causing so much confusion, was because the people they're communicating with are not here in the now. They're not in this time frame, which is a fascinating element of those jobs. The journals speak to me, and these journals appear to weave a story of my frustration, which is forever clear until about now, really. Now, you will note with them, if you were reading the journals, you will probably note with them that the business manner of them, they have a business manner about them. They're here for business. It's strictly business. And the mystery is, who are they conducting business with that involves me while unethical behaviour continued around me, which it did. But they stepped back and said nothing about that. But there did come a time when they did interact. So, yeah, business is business with them. They have business to conduct here. That's why they're there. In fact, in Wiltshire, just recently in May, a police sergeant was astounded when he saw 3 6-foot blondes studying a crop circle in Wiltshire. Recently this was, police sergeant on patrol. He stopped, got out the vehicle, and they ran. And he said they could run like the wind, and then they vanished. That was a police sergeant in Wiltshire recently. So we can see that they're about. They certainly are. Here's just an entry. It's a couple of entries from my log, dated the 9th of the 5th, 2003. Deep black harassment. I'm awoken at 8:55 from a flash going off inside of my head. That was very sinister. Heard the voice, why can't you do as you're told? At 10th of the 5th, 2003, I'm targeted from 0500 while in sleep. Battle noises and gunfire. Quite nasty, and it is quite nasty. Now, it's an apparent attempt, I suggest, at all times to keep my mind under constant attack with a baffling array of nonsensical and irrelevant data to stop interaction from happening. That is a conclusion that I have reached with them. I also concluded they were doing some form of bizarre covert weapon testing as well. So I perhaps then assess that the UFOs continue to say nothing. And if you can imagine, has anybody heard of the dark net? The dark net, yeah. What I am suggesting is that within these journals and in the framework of my experiences, that I was somehow wired into an advanced alien darknet that uses, instead of computerized technology, the power of thought and simulation. And a comment is made by an element, this is complex, and I might not explain it very well, but a comment is made that possibly abuse has occurred by one of these organisations who was watching me on the 1st of the 6th, 2003. They're actually saying, are these people from above, I don't know whether it's true, I've no idea, I don't know, but they're actually saying that the people behind my targeting are them. That could be true, I don't know. The jury's out on that one. What they do then, according to these journals, I pick up a pattern, I interact, a day later I'm hit. I interact, a day later I'm hit. And that was the theme of the journals. What was happening? I'm interacting with them, then I get whacked. I'm interacting with them, and so on and so on. And what happened is, this is a drawing of what happened where, on the 7th of the 6th, 2003, one of them indicated she would fly over at midnight in a UFO. I heard this. It was staggering, but I heard it, and I'm always hearing it outside of myself, so it's not in here, it's outside of myself where you hear it. And she said she'd fly over at midnight, and did so, and it was a flash of light before her arrival. There was this flash of light, and there was this interesting comment that she said, "We must meet." Why must we meet? But that's what she said. And that's very interesting. And this is kind of like interesting there. I don't know whether you could see that slide correctly there, but they were communicating in a symbology. They were communicating in an advanced symbolism with rotation and modelling, a bit like the diagram that you saw on some slides previously. And at that time I was lost to what was happening. In 2014, however, it was revealed that at a basic level this was communication with a dimensional group across the landscape of time, soul and space. Why have radio communication when you can enhance the process with the speed of thought? But the bafflement of my entry to that, what I've written there about what I'm seeing, is baffling. Well, it would be baffling, but they're speaking to someone. They're not speaking to me, they're speaking to someone else. So that's not baffling when you get it into that perspective. I'm working nights. There's an entry for the 7th of the 7th, 2003, when I'm working nights. I'm trying to sleep, and they're hitting me with an exhaustion simulation. Telephone keeps ringing in my head, so I'm trying to sleep on day shift. No, I'm on nights, so I'm sleeping during the day. And what they used to do, they would hit me with an exhaustion simulation where I'd be running to the point of exhaustion in my sleep, or they trigger adrenaline in me. Crazy stuff. But yet, what happened during that day is the telephone kept ringing in my head. I was going through hell with it. These things turn up, and they speak in English, yet in a metallic sounding voice in the room. It was just insane. And they said, I'm communicating, but to whom and why is a mystery. But they said this, metallic voice in my room said this: "It is time, you bandstanders, you who are sat on the fence, and you know who you are, it is time you started to do something. We have witnessed everything he has said and everything he has done." Now, that was kept in my journal for a number of years until now, because I'm sure you would agree with me, there's a time trigger going on. They didn't want it revealing until approximately now, I would think, this information. I had no idea of that, but that seems to be what's happening. It's interesting as we just go down that this is the entry, though, that has me in tears. I burst into tears when doing this entry because it clearly indicates that I'm whacked. I'm being whacked night and day. I'm trying to work frigging nights and days. I've got a responsible job, which I actually enjoyed. And I do not know as I sit here what time of day it is. I think it's Friday the 10th of July, or is it the 9th of July, 2003? No, it's the 10th of July. I slept last night, which must have been the 9th of July. I am confused and off balance, ETI everywhere. I recall getting so cross on Wednesday, or was it Tuesday? I don't know where I am when I'm writing that. I'm disorientated. You can hope I see, when I put that together, I actually just burst into tears because I'm obviously eloquently putting all this across, but underneath it is a trauma, underneath it is a cost, and I'm sure you'd share that with me. But we're moving on to the interaction with Nordic ETs. These are the ETs of the Nordic, what we call the Nordic group, the Scandinavian-looking group. Their eyes are roughly like that. That's probably one of them as well. That's a good example, probably, of one of them, what they look like. And the communication with them, they told me that they come from the Andromeda Galaxy, that the US and the Royal Air Force often scramble to intercept them, that the US military have been able to detect them since 1970, and therein lies an interesting story. It is said from documents, from research I've looked at, that the US Army were able to detect what type of UFO craft was coming over them, whether it was Nordic or something else, due to the frequencies and resonance they were giving off. They could never understand, the US military, what the purpose of these Swedish ETs were in turning up on our planet. It is documented that there was an incident in America where a dam was burst by them for some reason, and it is documented that it's actually in the news as well. I read the headline, the historic headline, when it happened, a flooded dam, and it's attributed to them. And they indicate to these people that the UK government have been aware of them since 1960, but despite high technology craft, which they have, they still attain spiritual belief in their society. That is fascinating that a high technology race like them obtain and have a spiritual belief is quite incredible. And it's an exchange of belief at 2.57 million light years. That's the distance. But for them, their technology is just there, which it would be. And the speed of thought, very interesting indeed. A real close dead ringer. I'm oblivious to the data that's going on that entry on the 3rd of the 3rd, 2006. I find that I'm dealing with two advanced cultures from what my journal says, but I'm traumatised with everything. I don't know what's going on. They've told me that I'm a very unique man, and the Andromeda galaxy is populated, and that our oceans are used by them. They have time-manipulated and artificial technology. Their artificial technology can give them problems similar to the Windows operating system going wonky, where these artificial intelligent UFOs will just fly off and do their own thing, because they've got minds of their own. This is what they're telling me. Also as well, which an interesting little snippet of information is that a planet is a form of regional governance. So if we have a galaxy with planets in it, on Earth we have countries that have governments, but planets are a regional governance in their systems, which is just incredible. But they're delivering a warning. They keep delivering this warning constantly to the United States government and the British governments. It's this continual warning about the direction we're going down and where it's going to end. It really is. And that is actually a dead ringer, and I've never discussed this in public before of one of them. She's a lady, I don't know who she is, but she is such a dead ringer for one of them who I interacted with. And what is striking about her is the fact that this lady who was called Lakin, she's called Lakin. I am Lakin of the Nord race, she said. And what it is that the eyes are bluer, a bit more pointed, the skin is radiant with health, and the hair is just hilariously spiked. It's just like butch spikes, really butch spiked hair she's got. And she's very beautiful, about 25 years away. I've repeated myself, I'm sorry, I've repeated that, sorry about that, but 1960, but she did say that Earth food would poison her, our food would actually poison her. And she told me that as the liaison goes on, because I'm told that this is phase 1 for me, as our liaison goes on, her faith, her religious faith, will be discussed with me. Because for me, I wouldn't be able to understand the scientific journey because I'm not a scientist, but I would be able to understand spiritual philosophy with her, which is exciting. Across a barrier of 2.57 million years is exciting. The Zulus had a term for them. They were known as the Wazugu, or the people of the dust devil, because the term Western European male, everybody thinks that the term Wazugu is the term for when the Zulus saw the first European Western male. It isn't. It means tall, blonde-looking person. Wazugu. Zulu folklore has them clearly in their folklore of them visiting. And I've never discussed this in public before, but that really is a dead ringer for one of them. And when you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that she's an alien. I class it because I've been acclimatized in such a way that I class her as a person, an individual. I have concerns. I do. I have concerns about it. But this is interesting. She showed me an image on the 22nd of the 3rd, 2008, of, and this is the only thing I could get. That's a human embryo, as we can see there on the right. I think I've got the pronunciation correct. We're looking at a zygote there, where there's what you've got, the male and the female egg merging, but that's a Nordic version of it. That's actually the closest I could get. It's a Celtic tattoo. Ignore the fact that it's a Celtic tattoo. You're looking at a Nordic embryo. You've got male, female, and something else attached to it. So you've got a free, whereas we've got one, this is a free kind of thing that they've got. Fascinating stuff. We can see quite clearly that there's some classified biological observations of these individuals. This was taken from what's known as a scientist's shop book, a guy who worked at Area 51 and went into hiding because he revealed this in the 1990s and the information came my way. If you look it up on Scribd, it's interesting. It's called Project Blue Planet. Very interesting indeed. Nobody's really known about it, but I thought I'd just share some of these biological observations. Now, the interesting thing is that the biological observations come from an Earth scientist, so surely if I'm liaising with somebody, she'll tell me if I'm wrong or right. But Nordics, this is very true, are a fine example of Hodgkin's law of evolutionary development, which means similar planets with similar environments and similar populations gravitate towards a similar biology and a social society. My big question to this woman, with the blonde spiky hair, is do they have crime in their society? I'd like to know that question. I would, and I think I will ask that question as well. I'm told with some further observations that the Nordic planets are hot and dry. They have an inner eyelid that filters dust, and the vision is acute at night. Their ears are tuned also for ultra and sub-sound waves. And this I found fascinating, that the Nordic heart is located where the human liver is for greater lung capacity. So they're very different to us biologically. It's interesting to note from this documentation that I've been reading, that's an example of Norse writing, of Nordic alien writing, based on the term keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And their blood acts as a coolant system. It's a green reddish in colour, and the question is there crime in their society? That has interesting implications, I think. Is there crime in their society? I'd like to know. These are from an Area 51 scientist who was closely looking at them on behalf of the US government. I'm not sure whether it's right. I just find it fascinating to share it with you. Now, however, this is when I evolve. Where is it? Have a look round. You can have a look at this. Pass it round if you wish. Don't run off with it. Rob, stop them if they... if they run off, they're worth millions. Anyway, that's... you can just pass it round. I'll just show you the... Have a pass round of that. Just pass it down. And you can see a bit better what we're doing. Now, what's happened is that on this day when this happened in May, when I evolved, when I suddenly woke up to what was going on, I was getting hellish harassment. The harassment I was getting was very complex. It's a lecture in itself. I will mention that at my next lecture I'm going to do with you, which is about remote viewing. It's a problem concerning non-human entities. It's a problem. But anyway, they turn up and they showed me an image of their craft. That's one of their smaller ones. It's like a helicopter craft. And what happened was, I heard the voice say, our appearance is a timely reminder I am to be left alone. And they were shining a red light into that thing there was in my mind, shining a red light at me. It's so vivid, pure white in colour. And I am confused because for a split second I am in another reality. So it appears. And it says that they said I was up against a cynical media, but on that day I was suffering extreme mental exhaustion. And they shone that red light at me to kind of like stimulate me and kickstart me, because it was not very pleasant at all. And I began contact again with them in May 2014. You're the first to hear it here. Full on, very full on. And there's no doubt in my mind as to who they are. No doubt in my mind. And the incidents across Dreamscape, what we had there, shows a recent female location, shows a recent film location where I was filming with Channel 4 in a field. It's going to go out in August. And on this occasion, what was fascinating is that the interaction was with 3 male Nordic aliens who looked like something out of a film, but they weren't. They were there. And it was due to problems of my harassment. Now, the warning came in the form of a symbolic vision. I had this vivid symbolic vision come into my head of clocks. It was like clocks. As you can see there's a clock, there's a big triangle craft, which is what it was. And there's a clock that has stopped at 11:45. To the left of that photo is a clock that's at 12 o'clock. They are drawing my awareness to the clock stopping at 11:45. And there's a symbol of an angel symbol flashing on and off. Now, obviously, you could go down the egoistic route now and go, and that is because I am special and I'm here to save the earth. No. That is because they are speaking to a third party. That's what they're doing. So what you've got is a scenario where an element of our government or our military is literally communicating with them. They're in conversation with them. And from what they tell me, there are advanced protocols regarding the communication of Earth governments with their government, because it's foreign technology, foreign everything. They tell me this, they won't tell me what the protocols are, but some government out there is communicating with them, and there are protocols involved, very advanced ones as well. And you see, on that day, when that happened, I wonder where the book is. Can you just tell me where it is? You've got it, okay. On that day, when that happened with the clocks and the triangles, I was filming, there'll be hell over it, I was filming with Channel 4 at the Royal Institute of International Affairs. I am not sure whether they are involved in the UFO cover-up, but there is a story of a man called Alec Newell, and it is Alec who was harassed by people from the Royal Institute of International Affairs. It is rumoured. It is rumoured. And so he had information about a contact event that had happened to him. So we were stood outside the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and we filmed there on that day of that symbolic vision that I was having, which is in my journal, which I find incredible. They were delivering a warning to somebody that I'm not privy to and using me as some sort of link. So they're speaking to someone. Not my business perhaps to say who it is, but in terms of the dimensional group, that's the field there where interaction happened on the 14th of the 7th, 2003. And remember I said to you that there was a woman who said, "See you later, Anthony," in a foreign accent. Bizarre as that may seem, and this was very bizarre, I was interacting, it's in the journal, and I have no memory of it, but I was interacting in that field during the day, and they flew in, and they said things about what they were going to do with me, to do with acclimatisation, integration, perhaps having a son, all this kind of thing with one of them in the UFOs. You see, it's not like what we see in the media where I was abducted by aliens and all this kind of thing. It's just real life, it's just so unbelievable. There were references to NATO involved in my abuse again, and an interest in the UK. She tells me, the lady alien, that their population is the size of Israel. Now, at that moment when that was going on, we hear this voice cut in and go, "Hello, Anthony," her voice, that she's immediately blocked by these dimensional ETs, and I can't hear her anymore. And they proceed to tell me what that lady was and what it was all about. I can't say any more about it. Bizarre, isn't it? Even I think, looking back at it, that it's bizarre, but it's what actually happened to me. And I've no investment in lying. I have no wish to lie, because I'm trying to find out what is going on as well. And this is interesting, because what's happening is throughout these journals, as we can see, just ask where it is. Have we got it there? Right, just so I know where it is. What we've got there is a dimensional group journal entry, 2003 to 2006. And I've just summed it up. We've got that I was abducted twice. The fact that I have, I think I've spelled that wrong, like Asperger's syndrome is a concern to them. I may have Asperger's. That is a concern because it kind of like causes a problem for them within. It causes a problem if I've got Asperger's syndrome in terms of what they're wanting to do with me. I was exposed to the mind harassment, which seems to create the disruption, and the interaction has occurred with them, but I cannot remember. There's a possibility that I actually have a son to them, but I have no idea. I can't remember. That's the idea. I can't remember, and that's probably what will happen. I'm getting quite emotional, but that's it. There's some random comments from them. That's typical of one of their craft, but one of their comments was, "Do they wish to know of our propulsion system so that nuclear weapons can be delivered better?" Was a comment from them. So they know that our technology, and back to what the Russian guy was saying, was that no information was given about military, it was all medical stuff that was given by them. An oppressive silence is present on the truth of their existence, and that puzzles them. They think that it's pointless. They out there think that the silence is pointless about them. They think there's no point to it, which is interesting. And they also indicated that our ETs are in our seas and from other planets and been in our seas for a number of centuries. We can see, in closing this lecture, you've probably seen a quarter of the data here. It's been 2 hours. You've taken a lot in, it's been warm. I appear to have a son, but the entry of that is hardly noticeable. In this journal is an innocuous little entry about a little alien guy coming to see me who looks like a child who's fascinated with my ham radio set. I have reason to suspect that it could be my son, but I didn't notice because the disruption's going on, you don't see. I'm caught up in the drama within these journals. You're the first venue to have me speak in public. In fact, you're the venue who encouraged me to do this. And it's in the public domain now. I'm sure this will lead to other things. They tell me that this is the first phase. What I've explained to you of my understanding is a first phase. The second phase is coming. So I'd like to thank you very much indeed. 10:15, I think it is. I'd like to thank you very much. If you've got any questions, please ask away, and thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone?
Could it be that part of you's not here, part of you's in another dimension?
Yes, that's right as well. That is correct. That's another complexity of the aspect that I'm wired into another reality while here. Definitely so, yeah, that's absolutely right. Anyone else at all? Yeah.
So why are you getting these transmissions into your head?
Yeah.
Disturbing you? You use the colloquialism don't sit on the fence. Did that not point to this might not be ETs, it might be government, because would an alien use colloquialism?
I'm sorry, I'm tired slightly. Just so I get my answer right to you, can you just ask me the question again? I maybe not understand your question.
When you were receiving this torture,
yes,
you couldn't sleep, etc.
Yes.
One of the aliens seemed to be saying, stop sitting on the fence.
Yes.
This is a colloquialism.
Yes, it is.
If aliens use a colloquialism, is it not more likely that this is perhaps pro-government elements talking?
Could be, mate, the door's open. Because I would be very foolish to say, oh, no, they're aliens, because I can clearly see from these journals that I don't know what the hell's going on. And so I think you're correct that, yes, I think we have to be cautious at all times with that, definitely. It could well be correct, yeah, could be.
Totally.
Yeah.
The Swedish blondes that you refer to look like Swedish blondes. How do you know they're not Swedish blondes?
You don't, do you? You don't know what they are. That's why you have to. That's hence the term foreign, because you don't know what they are. I understand from the research I've read that that's not what they were in the start. So what the hell they were, I don't know. But if you look at the research of Darrell Sims, he looks at something called screen memories, and there's an interesting case in that actually, like just what you said, whereby a woman has a screen memory about one of these Nordic Swedes telling her how much she loves her and this, that and the other, and when Darrell Sims goes deeper into hypnosis, it's not what it appears. So, it's, that's why I have concerns. I've got concerns, obviously I have, definitely.
How many people on a global basis have had what you've had or been abducted? How many people are? I've got no doubt what you're saying is true. But I think there's probably a different agenda behind it.
I don't disagree with you in the slightest. I think there is a different agenda going on. And you see, I'm trying, and clearly, as you can see from my presentation, I'm trying to find out what's going on because nothing can be taken at face value. I don't think you can trust them myself. I just don't. You can't trust them, and it's a shame. It is. Not only what bothers me is not only that, they've corrupted the spiritual as well. The spiritual has become militarised. And that's an issue for me. It really is. Go on, yeah.
You say that they're communicating with somebody that might be in a future time.
Yeah.
What if it's you? Because all the time's happening now. Yeah.
That's a very perceptive remark. I roughly know who it is, but I'm not kind of like ready to. Some things have to remain private, I think. They are speaking to a third party, definitely so. Probably this time and another time. Yeah, definitely so.
Sorry, no.
I was just going to ask, have you ever been hypnotised to try and get more information?
No, but I think that might happen. I think that would definitely happen. Yeah, I've never been hypnotised, no. So, right. And I need to do a polygraph test as well. And I need to do that independently I need to go independently at random to a company and just do it to see what happens. And I'll put that in the public domain as well, definitely. Yeah.
So the journal describes a low-level nuclear strike.
Which page? I forgot to. Yeah, very true. There is a constant theme from them, and it is a constant theme as well. There is a constant theme of the nuclear issue and nuclear weapons and a nuclear conflict within Europe, and this is a constant theme from them. And it's not just from them, it's from other parties up there, but it's this constant warning that's being delivered. And the question is, why are they so intent on warning this country, for example? Why? Because they've got an investment here. They've got an investment here. And I think we're going into dangerous territory there, so I'll leave it. But I think they've got an investment. Business is business with them. It's not like spirituality in any way. I can get that it's business means business with them. They're business people. It's like a business interaction. It's quite bizarre. That seems to be what's going on.
What you mean that they've got some kind of interest, as in physical interest, as in a base here or a number of bases here?
They've got an investment, and it's not that. No, that's too easy for them. It's something else complex that they've got an investment in. Actually, according to the Area 51 guy, he wrote a whole, which I'm including in the lecture, he wrote a page to say that they are interested in England. They even twigged that they were interested in England because of the major energy lines within it. It's a major energy centre is the United Kingdom, major. and they said that was one of the reasons they were interested in the UK, but there's perhaps another reason. Any ideas what you think that might be? I'm not going to say it, but any ideas why they might have a business interest in this country? No. Yeah, it's dangerous territory to go down, but there's a clear business interest as to why they would do that. They're smart people, it makes sense for them.
Well, there's a very psychic interest in this country.
Yes, there is. There is.
Spiritualist awakening, but that's no different, I would say, than all over the world.
No, that's it. You come and chat to me and I'll tell you a bit more. I just don't want to go on camera about it, but you know, I'll chat to you about it, about what that is. Yeah, definitely.
Could it be past or future propagation of the people on this planet? You know, maybe you don't know who your next door neighbour is.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I've had the most bizarre incidents of that, and a lot of people have as well. You know.
You don't know.
No, you don't. You don't. Love. You don't know.
Well, through my channeling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm doing, my book and everything. The Nordic aliens came to heal me when I had TB, and got rid of my cough within days. I was working with them.
The lady here, ladies and gentlemen, says that she had an interaction with them. What cleared her of tuberculosis, was it? Something?
Yeah, but they still continue to give me.
And they still continue. Yeah.
And I was working. I was working in the Middle East then.
And working in the Middle East.
As a singer as well.
Right, as a singer as well. Yeah. So we can see across the world people having interactions with them.
But there was Jacob, who I channeled through.
Yeah.
He brought them.
Right.
And it's only recently I asked him.
Right.
And he said that's who they were.
Yeah. So the total on Scandinavia. Yeah. Fascinating.
So they weren't malevolent. If they're going to heal people, so they're here to help. They're not really.
Are they here to help? You don't know. You've got to be so careful. And as the gentleman said rightly so over there, you know, what are you looking at really? That's why you've got to have a guard up. You've got to, because it's uncharted waters, isn't it? I think that's it, Rob, isn't it? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much anyway, ladies and gentlemen. That was a good one.